Good morning. We hope you and yours have been having a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Republicans in Florida have supermajorities now, 85 of 120 seats in the House, 28 of 40 in the Florida Senate. It means they can cut off debate, move full speed ahead with their agendas following midterm election success. How will they flex that muscle? Forrest Saunders gives us a preview.
With the gavels passed in both the House and Senate, new Republican leaders took the reins Tuesday, each with a two-thirds majority at their disposal.
You are ready to get to work, and I am honored to be your speaker.
In speeches, Speaker Paul Renner and Senate President Kathleen Passidomo laid out some of that work, and easing inflation was topping the list. Leaders promised to reduce taxes, confront causes of high fuel and electric prices, plus more affordable housing.
We need affordable rental property for all income levels and family sizes.
Broader goals include more work on election integrity, heightened enforcement of new laws regulating race and sex education, plus a special committee to strengthen storm resiliency, though not addressing causes of climate change. Speaking of storms, leaders vow to throw the kitchen sink at property insurance reform during next month's special session. That could include tamping down litigation and temporarily boosting reinsurance.
Once we do all that I expect we're going to do in this special session, I do believe we will see some downward pressure on rates, but don't expect it overnight.
For Democrats, there's a road for bipartisan cooperation on many items, and their leaders are staying optimistic. That's despite the potential for more what they call culture war policy.
We've persisted in the minority for quite some time, and so we know how to do this. Even though we're in a super minority now, that doesn't mean that we won't hold the line.
Further abortion restriction, a top concern for the minority caucus, but neither the Speaker nor Senate President Tuesday said it was a certainty.
I don't know what's going to happen, and again, until the Supreme Court weighs in and rules on the challenge to the 15 weeks, there's really nothing to talk about.
Florida's Supreme Court will have the final say on the 15-week abortion ban. Though we don't have a specific timeline, justices are expected to take up the issue and determine whether or not the law is permitted under the state's broad privacy protections. And it sounds like their decision could be the linchpin on whether or not we see future restrictions in the next legislative session. That's the latest out here at the Capitol. I'm Forrest Saunders reporting.
More now from Senate Minority Leader Lauren Book, whose district covers part of Broward. And she's trying to stay positive, she said, when asked about her party's weakened position. She says members will work to find common ground with Republicans, hopeful there will be such opportunities.
We have all been talking about property insurance, affordability, affordable housing, workforce housing. Those are things that we have been working on and agree with the other side of the island.
All right, so talk about affordable housing, workforce housing, insurance. Brian, we've heard that before about insurance, about affordable housing. The hue and cry gets louder and louder, and yet consumers are saying they still don't see enough being done. Then you hear the legislature say, well, we'll try and do more in this upcoming special session, but it may take a long time before you feel it. Talk about, first and foremost, the pocketbook issues and where you see that going, if anywhere.
Well, I think especially with homeowners insurance, people are starting to feel that now. The bills are starting to come, and more are going to be coming in the next few months. And people are opening up those bills and going, oh my God, because these are huge increases some people are getting if they're able to get insurance at all. It's also where we've benefited from a lot of people moving here and a lot of growth. There's already been some indication that homeowners insurance and, interestingly enough, property taxes are starting to put a little pause on some people coming here. So what used to look like a pretty affordable place to come to if you were moving from New York, New Jersey, wherever, they're shocked by what they may have to pay for homeowners insurance and property taxes. So will that slow things down significantly? We don't know yet, but those are things that the legislature needs to be looking out for.
And again, as I said, the hue and cry would seem to be so loud, you would expect some more decisive action. There's been a lot of talk about trying to weed through and get rid of all these fraudulent lawsuits that many argue in the insurance industry side are helping rack up these high insurance costs. We've seen Band-Aids, as critics call them. You've talked about this a lot. At the end of the day, how much actually gets done? We simply don't have a good answer for that. And you base part of that on what you've seen over your many years covering Tallahassee.
Well, for now, we'll give the slight benefit of doubt to the brand new Senate President and the brand new House Speaker. But if we look at all the folks before them, no, we don't expect a lot to get done, and in part because they listen attentively to insurance lobbyists. And, you know, while there's a lot of concern about you know, too many lawsuits, and that's legit. We are known as one of the lawsuit haven
Most
compared to
litigious
most
state in
of
the
the
nation.
states. We have billboard lawyers everywhere, as I like to call them, and so yeah, there's way too many lawsuits, and I suppose they could put some restrictions on those, and the insurance industry is hoping for that, and maybe that would help, but I don't see a short-term fix. They're talking about doing policy changes that wouldn't immediately change insurance rates.
You heard a few of the other items talked about in Forrest Saunders' overview. Abortion went from 24 weeks to 15 weeks. Challenges there. Governor Ron DeSantis presumably has his eyes very much focused on the White House bid, though he keeps telling everybody chill out for a while. Nonetheless, abortion. And how will Republicans, mindful of the governor's prospective future hat in the ring, handle that, do you think?
You know, if you look at it just from political strategy for a nationwide election, you know, a lot of those electoral votes that are needed to win, if you become the nominee, come from blue states that are not as abortion unfriendly as many of the red states are. So that's going to be an interesting path to see him try to walk. But first he has to win the nomination. And among many hardcore conservatives, outright banning of abortion is what they would like to see. So it's going to be interesting to see which direction he goes in. I tend to think because he's kind of hinted this in the past, that he'll go for more restrictions.
Let me ask you two, culture wars, they saw that was successful for Governor DeSantis, a landslide win in the midterms, and they seem with that green light to be saying more of the same on issues involving sex and race. Critical race theory is already being challenged in the courts. He's facing challenges there, the governor is, but not letting their foot off the gas on those issues that they saw, at least partially, really help lead to success in November.
Well, at some point, those issues will wear themselves out. I mean, how much can you do about a woke agenda, if you will? I mean, they've already passed the laws, so now it's a matter of schools and other organizations and businesses, you know, obeying the new laws that Florida has passed. Floridians have to get used to the fact that we're a very conservative, very red state, excuse me, and the laws that we've passed are what we're going to have to live with.
Brian, how's this work behind closed doors? A veteran of Tallahassee coverage, you've got a governor who you have said may well be, and I think it'd be hard to argue, the most powerful governor in Florida history, and Ron DeSantis is certainly one of. You've legislators who obviously are attuned to where he may be headed. Is this more getting behind closed doors to some degree, banging heads together and making sure that their agenda is hand in glove with his? How's that work?
Well, normally there would be a lot of head banging.
With respect for sunshine laws,
sure,
by the way.
Yeah, but
we hope
the governor would, you know, tell the House Speaker and the Senate President what they expect. In past years, you had, you know, some very strong legislative leaders who would say, "Well, we know what you'd like, but no," you know.
Reminds me of the Dempsey Barons back
the
in
Dempsey
the day.
Barron era. But we haven't seen that in a while, and so far from what the new Senate President and House Speaker are saying, they sound like they're going to be in lockstep with whatever Ron DeSantis wants.
And are Democrats whistling past the graveyard? There were supermajorities for Republicans. Democrats, as you've said, how do Democrats breathe some life back into the party? And if that sounds harsh, Democrats have been saying that to you and to me. Where do Democrats go right now?
You know, they're at death's door in the state. They need a lot of help to move forward. I think they need to worry less about winning governor's races and Senate races at this point and worry more about winning county commission races and city hall races to build the party back up. And Democrats I've talked to have said the same thing. And some of the areas of the state where they, you know, routinely don't do very well, they kind of abandon the panhandle, regions like that. Maybe they need to try a little harder in those areas to get there. But, you know, there was a time when most of the Democrats in Florida were actually conservative Democrats. You know, when you look back at Bob Graham or, you know, Ruben Askew was such a teetotaler, he did not allow alcohol in the mansion. Can you imagine a governor today doing that?
No.
You know, so you know, the idea that Democrats in Florida have always been these screaming liberals is not really the history of Democrats in Florida.
And in your mind, Democrats, we've talked about this, a rebuilding project at the grassroots level, looking at localities, looking at people they can bring up, reinvigorating their bench. Republicans have done it quite well. Democrats, again, have acknowledged we need to borrow from that playbook.
Look, Ron DeSantis has done a marvelous job of getting the Republicans in Florida fired up. He's done such a good job doing that. He's now a presidential contender if he wants to be. So, and he's beloved by a lot of Republicans around the country. So he's done a fantastic job of firing up his base. Democrats need that kind of thing.
Bottom line, you'll be looking closely at the fingerprints and the tea leaves of what he's doing, where he's pushing, what he's speaking out on in this legislative session, because really, in many ways, it'll be presumably could be his last one where he's not spending most of his time thinking about a presidential.
Well, one telltale sign we got was the legislature's already talking about passing a law where you don't have to resign to run.
Yep.
There was some concern that if Ron DeSantis ran for president, he would have to resign from the governor's office because that's our law. So they're going to fix the law to help him out. That's awfully nice of them.
Well, you just did, among your many talents, you're clairvoyant, because we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And as we look on to 23 and 2024, we'll do that in our next segment. Still ahead. Well, Brian took it away. We'll talk about the Governor Ron DeSantis run for president, what it might mean, and how state lawmakers might try to signal some changes to help make it happen.